Viruses are one way we get to see evolution in action. So evolution involves changes, and those changes are mutations. Mutations are changes in the genetic materials of an organism or a substance like a virus. Viruses need to copy their genetic material in order to infect new cells. There may be changes in the genetic material due to mistakes and errors during replication. By having there be changes in the genetic material, there might be changes in the traits, because these genetic instructions are what give viruses their traits. Now, some of these changes may make the virus less effective. In fact, most of the changes probably are not going to increase the infectivity of the virus. But those new viruses aren't going to spread. They aren't going to become the dominant member of the viral population. These viruses will not continue to exist and spread. However, changes which make a virus more effective, whether it makes them more infectious, allows them to infect a broader variety of cells, maybe it allows them to produce more offspring within the infected cell, those are the types of things that will cause a virus to be more infectious, and those traits will be kept. Now, it's not that the virus is thinking or has a plan. Natural selection simply means that those traits which make a virus more effective at copying itself will be carried on. So you can't worry that viruses are being strategic as to how they're changing themselves. These changes are just happening, and those changes that make the virus more effective are those which are kept just through natural selection. When we look at the genetic material of a virus, viruses use either DNA or RNA as their genetic material. Cellular machines that copy DNA are more effective than those that copy RNA and make fewer mistakes. Therefore, RNA viruses mutate at a slightly faster rate than DNA viruses. This does mean that some RNA viruses evade our immune system more easily because they have a higher rate of change over time. Viruses are a great example of evolution in action. Because of their higher mutation rate and rapid generation time, we can see evolution occur more rapidly in viruses than many other biological substances. The traits which allow a virus to spread are selected at a higher rate. One of the goals of viruses is efficiency above all. Eukaryotic cells have a large amount of genetic material, much of it with no purpose, but it just comes along with the important genes. Prokaryotic cells are much more efficient with their genetic material. They have much smaller genomes, and those genes are more streamlined. And yet viruses are more efficient still. They contain only the genes for those proteins that the cell would not be making on their own, but otherwise they use the proteins and the genes of the existing cell to have the cell make what they need. So where do these viruses come from? Well, viruses are not on the tree of life because they are not considered to be alive. Another way of thinking about this, would it be possible to have a piece of computer software before there was a computer? Not really, or at least it would be an idea, but not an effective product. And so likely, viruses are the products of cells. Viruses came about after cells existed because the cells were present. You couldn't start with a virus and form a cell. But once you have cells, these viruses, these sort of stray pieces of genetic coding, could exist and spread and be copied. Now, each virus does seem to be made up of a combination of genetic materials. From a variety of potential different sources, yet there is no clear relationship between all the different types of viruses, meaning there are definitely viruses that are related to each other, but there wasn't one ancestral virus that gave rise to all different viruses. Now again, there can be strains of a single virus and families of viruses. In fact, one of the best ways to determine this relatedness of viruses, the best way to determine relationships between different types of viruses, is to look for similarities within their genetic material. And this process suggests that the viruses did not evolve from a single source or only once, but that there were multiple times of these stray genetic codes making their own biological entity, making these viruses that can then be copied and passed on from one cell to another. Another interesting aspect of viruses is that whether they are DNA or RNA based or have envelopes or not, that usually doesn't determine which types of cells they're able to infect or how severe of a disease they will cause to the infected organism. Those traits of their genetic material on their envelopes don't directly translate to the other characteristics of those viruses, but it may provide some suggestion as to their relatedness. What causes a virus to be a variant of concern? We'll talk about that in the next video.